And he's brought to you by Peruzzi Nissan, where they say our business is you. Zach, you may have just caught some of that. I've been shocked today that the vast majority of people have been very reasonable, very angry, but very reasonable about what they saw last night.
Well, I suppose that's a credit to them. I mean, you can look at it two ways. First off, they had a 10-point lead at halftime. They were leading going into the fourth quarter. They're 15-0 this year when they were leading going into the fourth quarter. It's a Super Bowl that they could have and should have won. And opportunity is not a lanky visitor, right? You don't know when you're going to be back in that situation. The flip side of that is you played the best player in football, Patrick Mahomes, and he was outstanding in the second half. He was outstanding in the fourth quarter. So I think that there are parts of it where you tip your cap to Mahomes and you say, if someone told you when we spoke on the morning after the Lions game that they would have a lead going into the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl, they probably would have taken it. But
yep.
I do think you need to look at the opportunity that was lost. You lived through 28-3 in Atlanta. I don't think it's quite like that.
Not at all. Yeah, not at all to me.
The expectation is there to win this game.
Zach, if you look back on this game, maybe it's later today, whatever, and you say, man, the Eagles should have done this. What's the this in your mind?
I think that this is they should have gone for it instead of punting the ball on that 4th and 3 in the second half there. And the reason I say that is because they've been aggressive even in those situations throughout the year. And I thought that this was a game where you needed points and you couldn't give them possessions, and you didn't know. Mahomes was so good to start the second half. I think that was the third drive of the second half there. So the long punt return put them at the 5-yard line. But the reality is the Eagles weren't stopping Mahomes much in the second half. And so I would have been aggressive there and gone for it even on your side of the field.
A real quick follow-up, Zach. I'm sorry, John. At the time, did you think that? Because I know what you're thinking, and I'm sitting at home and I'm saying, no, this is the right call to punt the ball because if you don't get it, they get it to 30. It's almost guaranteed. Were you thinking it at the time too, Zach?
I was thinking it at the time. Now, I mean, there's a fourth down decision bot that you can find on Twitter. And so I had that in front of me that showed it was a strong go-for-it situation. But even my instincts were saying I tend to think with the way the Eagles convert in short yardage, 4th and 3 in most situations is a go-for-it situation for them.
Zach, when you evaluate the performance of the defense, the one thing that I never would have believed is the fact that they wouldn't have been able to get home on Patrick Mahomes like all night long. I can't believe it. They were able to have such success with it all year long, and then they couldn't do anything.
No, you're absolutely right. I asked Jonathan Gannon before the first game, what needs to be better with this group this year, and he said affecting the quarterback and taking the ball away. And this was the first game all season when they had neither a sack nor a takeaway. They had one other game without a sack. They've had games without a takeaway. This was the first time all year when they didn't have a sack and they did not have a takeaway. The fact that they did not get to Mahomes, when you think about the last time that the Chiefs were in the Super Bowl, and what do you remember from that game? It was the way Tampa Bay's pass rush beat up Mahomes. So Kansas City did not want that to happen. I mean, Patrick Mahomes' time to throw the ball in the second half was his quickest all season. So they did some things to counteract it, and I know there's a lot of talk nationally today about the surface of the field, and that was a factor. But the bottom line is the Eagles have the best pass rush group in the NFL, and they did not sack the quarterback, and it's hard to win against Patrick Mahomes if that's the case.
Zach, did anything, you know how fans react. They'll say, oh, yesterday so-and-so was bad. They need to upgrade that right away. Was there anything that stood out to you yesterday that kind of showed up that maybe is something that was bad or covered up most of the season?
Well, there's two ways to answer that question. The first thing is that in terms of what needs to be changed, I mean, they have 8 starters who are free agents on defense. So even if they have good spots, there's going to be a lot of turnover here. I think an under-the-radar spot, and this is partly due to yesterday, but you've seen it throughout the year, Quez Watkins, who was really good a year ago, there was a catchable deep pass over the middle that he just couldn't connect with. And I think when you're looking at the core offensively, and you have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert, I think Wes Watkins can add a lot to a team, but I think that third receiver spot, they can get more from that position in this offense. And I wouldn't be surprised if they upgrade on it, or at least draft someone to compete there.
What was the mood in the locker room about the call at the end of the game? And did you feel that there were people that were making as an excuse about everything? I think that they did a really nice job of not appearing that way, at least, in their post game comments.
So I spoke to James Bradbury for about 8 minutes, and James Bradbury, stood by his locker, took every single question on it, and said he grabbed the jersey. He tugged at the jersey. So, based on that, it was holding. He was hoping they would let it slide or let it ride, I think is the term that he used there. And there have been times in the past when that's the case, but he admitted that he tugged on the jersey. And it's a really tough call in that spot. By the letter of the law, yes, that's holding, right? And, I think that you can't knock the call based on that. But a 3rd and 8 in the Super Bowl in the fourth quarter, that's where you say sometimes you let it go a bit. But if this is a radio station in Kansas City, maybe the opinion's different. I think for Eagles fans, what you're left kind of frustrated about this morning is that, man, if they held them to a field goal on that play, on the next play, and Jalen Hurts had about 1:40 to go with one timeout, it'd be fascinating to see what the result.
I think they tie it. I'm confident they would have at least gotten a field goal or a field goal attempt to try to tie it.
Yeah, and I said throughout the week that in my eyes, this was a game where the quarterback who had the ball last was going to win, and Kansas City had the last meaningful possession. And if the Eagles had gotten off the field there, they would have given the ball back to the offense with a chance to either tie or win.
Zach, it looks like Steichen is going to be the next head coach in Indianapolis from reports yesterday. Where do you think Gannon is going, staying, and what are they going to do with that offensive coordinator position?
Yeah, so in Gannon's case, there's a lot of buzz about Arizona. Arizona paused their search last week, and it would make sense for them to talk to him. I think Jonathan Gannon can be a good coach in this league, and so we'll see what happens with the Cardinals situation. As far as the Colts, that's expected to be Steichen. It could happen today, and I think what the Eagles do is I think they promote Brian Johnson. Brian Johnson, the quarterback's coach. He's done a really good job working with Jalen Hurts. He's very respected around the league. If he's not coaching, if he's not the Eagles' offensive coordinator next year, he's someone's offensive coordinator next year. I'll put it that way. So that's the natural promotion there. I know there's some other guys on staff that they like, such as Kevin Patullo, but I think it makes sense to promote Johnson. And then if Gannon leaves, I would watch out for Denard Wilson. He's their defensive backs coach. I can see him getting promoted. But this is a real thing to watch because in the Doug Peterson era and the Andy Reid era, brain drain was a real thing. How did you replace not just the coordinators who might have left, but the position coaches who might have left as well? The Eagles have a really good coaching staff right now, and they need to do everything they can to preserve that.
He is brought to you by Peruzzi Nissan. He's Zach Berman of The Athletic. Read some great coverage from Zach all Super Bowl long and all season long. Zach, there is sometimes perceptions. I know Bob and you have both been in a lot more of the end of the season locker rooms than I have, but I know that in some of those, you can sort of get a sense that a player feels they're not coming back or that a player might be walking away. Did you get that sense last night in the locker room from any players like Kelsey, like Cox, like Brandon Graham?
So, first off, the overall sentiment is something I shared before, which is that there's going to be a lot of change, right? I mean, the players on that team know how many free agents there are here. They know the quarterback's due for a big contract, and they can do the math as well. As far as Kelsey, I've been covering the last few years of this with him, and you can't make that. He'll tell you he can't make that decision now. So that's something 2-3 weeks from now. I think there will be a little more clarity. There probably has to be clarity on that, frankly. With Graham and Cox, that's a different situation because both are free agents. They have other guys at those positions, and I think there's going to be decisions from the team in those cases as well. So I didn't get any sense from either one of them last night that I could tell you. But regarding Kelsey, because he's been contemplating retirement at the end of the year for the past few years, and I think he waits for a point where his body and mind are at a place where he feels comfortable making that decision.
Don't the Eagles have to know though? Not sooner than later, but I mean, they got to prepare, right?
In previous seasons, sooner than in previous seasons because they're 5 months later into the offseason,
right? Exactly,
5 weeks later into the offseason than they typically would be, and they definitely need to know by the start of the league year in mid-March. And then, they have to put a budget together here. They have to figure out if Kelsey's back, what resources are they allocating there? And if Kelsey's not back, how are they reallocating those resources? And there's, a butterfly effect even if Kelsey's not back, what do you do with Isaac Seumalo? So there's a handful of decisions that are made based off of Kelsey. And I think, Jason Kelsey's really privy to the situation. So I think they will know. My guess is after the combine, right before the start of free agency.
Zach, how sustainable is this success? Because if you go up and down the line from offense to defense, you have a lot of career years out of a lot of guys. Mm-hmm. Is that sustainable? Is this a really good team? I know there's a lot of turnover that's coming, but with the core that's here, is this a really good team for continued years? Or was this year more of a, well, that was the year you could have gotten it done?
Great question, and this is something that's really dominating my attention now, this afternoon, this evening, the next few days. Nick Sirianni, I don't know if you heard his comments after the game, but he made a comment how great for the league that game was because it was the two best quarterbacks in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And if someone told you going into the year that Jalen Hurts would be playing in a game where the coach says it's the two best quarterbacks in the NFL, and I understand there might be hyperbole to that, kind of like when Peter Laviolette called Claude Giroux the best player in the NHL. But it's not out of the realm of possibility. And I frame it that way as saying when you have a quarterback like that, and this is the way they feel in Cincinnati, and this is the way they feel in Buffalo, when you have a quarterback like that, you have a chance. And there's going to be changes around him. But, I think it's sustainable with the trajectory that we've seen in Jalen's career. And then the Eagles also have a young core in place. I mentioned those receivers. They have a better group of young offensive linemen than a lot of other teams do. Same thing with their pass rushers. The back seven on defense is going to undergo a lot of changes. They need to figure out how to replace some of these aging players. But they also have draft resources that a lot of teams in this situation don't, and that, frankly, they did not have in 2017. And the other, in terms of the number 10 pick in the draft year, the other thing to consider, too, is I think they at least should have learned from that 2017 experience and the few years thereafter that maintaining a roster requires different muscles than building a roster. And there are certain decisions they're going to have to make or not make if they want to keep building or if their focus is simply maintaining. And in that case, it requires you to be unemotional in some cases, be creative in some cases, and make some of those aggressive decisions that you make during the building stage.
Zach, I got to tell you how much we appreciate your input all year long. And we thank your insights the day after. It's always great. Love reading your stuff and everything. And we definitely will, do a finale next week and sort of put a big bow on it, all right?
I can't wait. I look forward to this every Monday.
Thanks, Zach. See you,
Safe
buddy.
travels, Zach.